This is the Agency Profit Podcast, the podcast for agency owners that want to run a more profitable business that doesn't depend on them. Introducing your host, CEO and co-founder of Parakeeto, Marcel Pettipaw.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. I'm very excited to introduce you to our guest today, who has been in the mergers and acquisitions space for over 20 years. She's one of only 3 women in the U.S. that holds a mergers and acquisitions Master Intermediary. She runs Seiler Tucker Incorporated and has helped over 1,000 businesses reach their dream exit, not only through selling the business, but helping them get ready for a sale, optimizing their operations, their profitability, and really preparing everything that needs to be true to get the best possible price in an exit. She recently published her newest book, Exit Rich. And when she's not helping businesses exit, she is spending time with her daughter. So with all of that, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marcel. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'm excited to dive into today's topic because I think for a lot of people listening, this is what they're doing all of this work for, right? They're preparing for this outcome. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is kind of perceived as like winning the Super Bowl, right? Like, did you really do it if you didn't have an exit at the end? So I think it's very topical and something that a lot of folks will gain a lot from, even if they don't plan on selling. I think there's a lot of aspects of preparing for a sale or thinking about making your business sellable that just make it a better business to run. So really excited to dive in. Before we do that, I'd love to know what brought you into this mergers and acquisition space in the first place.
So, I tell you, I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to sell companies. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always owned many different businesses in different verticals. I went into franchise sales, franchise development, franchise consulting, was actually a partner with several different franchisors, an equity partner. And I found myself kept saying no to buyers because so many buyers would come to me and want to buy an existing business, and we didn't have existing businesses. We were only working with new franchises. And all of a sudden, one day, I just kind of said, why am I saying no? I should be saying yes. And that's really as simple as it is. How I decided to start my mergers and acquisitions business is because I was done turning people, down. And I believe in saying yes, yes, yes. I believe in the universe and I believe in law of attraction. So that's really what led me into my mergers and acquisitions business.
Very interesting. So, you really got pulled into it. I'm curious, there's a lot of people listening that probably can't imagine buying an existing business as opposed to just starting one on their own, but this is a really common practice. Why do people buy existing businesses as opposed to starting up from scratch?
Well, it is a common practice, and it's always been a common practice because, there's 30.2 million businesses in the United States. At any given time, 40% are up for sale, 30 to 40% are up for sale. And why start a business when you can buy an existing business that has a proven track record, has employees in place? Many of them operate in all 6 cylinders, if not all 6 cylinders, all 6P's, half of the 6P's, and they're already in revenues, they're already making profit. So why start a new business when you can buy an existing business? When it's important to start a new business, in my opinion, is when you're starting something that's completely unique, something that services a niche, something that solves a problem that somebody else is not doing. When it doesn't make sense to start a new business is, how many more coffee shops do we need? How many more ice cream stores do we need? When you're looking at starting, one of those brick and mortar locations, you really should look at buying an existing business versus a startup.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you a question that sounds so simple, but I'm sure the answer is much more complicated, much more nuanced. But bear with me while we work through this. Let's imagine we have 2 agencies. They've got the exact same amount of revenue. What determines one's going to sell for X multiple, the other one's going to sell for the higher end of the multiple? What's the difference between somebody that doesn't get a whole lot of the potential value out of their business versus an agency that's going to sell towards the top end of what's reasonable for that kind of a business?
And are you talking about digital marketing agency?
Primarily digital, yeah. So digital services,
so
website
it's going to be a multiple of EBITDA, not revenue, unless it's a SaaS business.
That's why I'm in the SaaS business, Michelle.
So you're going to get a multiple. So you're in SaaS. You're not in digital marketing, right?
That's right.
So you're going to get
we're
multiple.
looking for that
See,
top line.
you're smart. You're going to get
Yeah.
multiple revenues.
For the agencies out there, it's EBITDA. So that's on profit. That's typically where the multiple is going to be.
It's EBITDA, right? It's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And let's take it one step further. It's adjusted EBITDA. So we got to normalize those financials and add back personal expenses and non-recurring. So
right. So if you're underpaying yourself, owners listening to this, if you're underpaying yourself, it's going to get caught in the due diligence. So just pay yourself a good salary.
Well, or not necessarily, because if you're running personal expenses through the business, I can add all that back.
Right.
So we normalize the financials. We add back personal expenses. We add back non-recurring. What we can't add back is cash. So no high cash. But if you have two agencies, the EBITDA is the same. Here's what makes the difference. The 6P's. The ST 6P's. You want me to take you through them real quick?
Let's go through the
Number
6P's.
One, you got agency 1, agency 2, EBITDA is the same. People. Do both agencies operate without the owner? Can both agencies operate without the owner? Do they have a management team in place? Do they have the right people in the right seat? Have they answered the who question? Who handles marketing? Who handles customer service? Who handles legal? All of the tasks that are in that agency. That's number one. If you have one agency that's dependent upon the owner and the other one not, there's your competitive advantage right there that will get you a higher price. Makes sense?
And let me ask you a question, Michelle. Is it that worth much if it's in the owner's head, or is it worth more if it's written down somewhere that can be accessed?
It's worth a lot more, and that's the third P, which is processes. It's worth a lot more if it's on paper, because if it's in the owner's head, look, I just got a call from a little lady whose husband dropped dead of a heart attack. He wanted me to sell his business because he left her with a mountain of debt. He has all subcontractors, and all the data's in his head. When he died, the business died. So you got to get the data out of your head. So number one, the business can't be dependent upon you. If it is, it'll sell for less than the agency that has the right people in place. Number two is product. Your digital agency. Product is your industry, your product, your service. Is it on the way up or is it on the way out? Are they both pretty even as far as the niche that they serve? Am I making sense? Okay. Number three is processes. If digital agency A has great processes, well documented, designed with the customer experience in mind, and their processes are creating raving fans who give them referrals, then that's going to sell for more than one that doesn't have process designed around the customer experience, has processes designed around the owner's agenda. Plus, the processes must be productive, efficient, well-documented. Policy and procedure manuals, SOP checklist, employee handbooks, non-competes for the upper management in those digital agencies. Policy, procedure manuals. A lot of digital agencies don't have employees. They have 1099s working out of their houses, right? Then the other P, here's the highest value driver right here, proprietary. Proprietary can take you from a 5 to 6 to 8 to 10 multiple of EBITDA. There's 6 pillars to proprietary. So number one, how well branded is digital agency A, digital agency B? The more well branded you are in your niche, the more your company will sell for. If this company is more well branded, it's going to get a higher multiple than this company. Make sense? Number two, trademarks. Do they have any federal trademarks? Is their company federal trademarked, or do they just have a state trademark? And that owner never checked the federal database to make sure that they could actually use that name. Companies receive cease and desist letters every single day. They've been in business 5, 10, 15, 20 years because they never check the database, the federal database, to make sure that they can use that company name. They're not going to have any patents, but they could have contracts. So contracts are very valuable, especially if you have a subscription model in your digital agency where it automatically renews. Reoccurring revenue. So contracts with reoccurring revenue will get you a higher multiple, and contracts that won't. Here's the caveat to contracts. Make sure you have the 2-sentence transferability clause that says this contract is transferable upon a new entity. Because if the buyer refuses to do a stock sale, 98% of all sales are asset sales, and the consumers, the clients, fail or refuse to sign consent to transfer, your deal could fall apart. So you want that transferability language. Databases. That could really get you a higher multiple as well. Facebook paid $19 billion for WhatsApp, and WhatsApp was hemorrhaging money. So is your database, is it nurtured on an ongoing basis? Can be retargeted, can be repurposed. Does your digital agency have any celebrity endorsements, any radio personality endorsing it? I always tell my e-commerce businesses, if you can get any of those top positions on Amazon, Wayfair, Etsy, eBay, buyers will pay a higher multiple. Make sense?
Right.
And
So
then
in the
the other
agency
thing is-
space, this would be like clutch rankings, things like that. So agency
Correct.
databases, agency awards, etc.
Agency awards, absolutely. Any type of online proof, social proof that your agency has won these awards and, has great success. And then Patreons is the 5P. And digital agencies probably don't have to worry about this because they probably have that customer diversification. They don't really have customer concentration. Right?
Well, I mean, that's actually not necessarily true. We do see a lot of agencies that have a customer concentration problem where 25-30% of the revenue is made up of like one or two big whale clients that pay them a ton of money. And if they go away, it's, bad news for the agency. So that's a good one to call out.
Yeah, so then let's call that out. So most businesses follow the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients. So if you have 70% of your revenue coming from 30% of your clients, that could be an issue, right? Is that what you
Correct.
just said?
Yeah. You
so
don't want to
wanna
lose
make sure
one client and lose a lot of revenue.
Well, we were selling a media company, a media digital agency that have 5 clients who are selling between 10 and 15 million, but they cater to casinos, so they have 5 casinos. They lost 2 during the process. Revenues dropped in half, EBITDA dropped in half. They were no longer sellable. We ended up merging them with another media company. So you got to look at customer concentration versus customer diversification, and then profits. I always say lack of profits is never the problem. It's always a symptom of not running on one of the other 5 Ps. But you got to look at, how not only how profitable are you, but how sustainable is it? Do you have, reoccurring revenue? Do you have memberships? Do you have a subscription model? Because all of that will drive multiple. Makes sense?
All right. So there you
Did that
have it.
answer your question?
It does, in depth, the 6 Ps. And there's some things that I want to double click on here, but I want to just take a moment to acknowledge how thorough that is. And for those of you who've been listening to the show, we talk about a lot of these things. And one of the big reasons why I think this is so important is you can have cool clients, you can have lots of revenue, you can do all that stuff all day long. But when it comes to investing in the value of your business, a lot of the stuff you do on the back end that the client never sees, like your processes, like your documentation, like your systems, like the way your P&L looks at the end of every month or every quarter or every year, that stuff makes a big, big, big difference. And just think about the difference between having a 15% EBITDA and a 25% EBITDA when you're multiplying that by 4, 5, 6. I'm curious actually, Michelle, for this industry, what do you typically see the spectrum of valuations being, on the low end to maybe the higher end that you've seen?
Well, again, it's all about EBITDA. So businesses that have less than $1 million in EBITDA will typically trade from anywhere from 2 to 4, 4.5, depending upon the synergies. Companies that have over $1 million in EBITDA will typically go for 5 and up.
All right, 5 and up. So there you go.
Yeah.
Get to that million
over
plus
$1 million
EBITDA.
in EBITDA get you a much higher multiple. There are a lot more buyers. Now pay attention to this because most people don't realize this. There are a lot more buyers for companies over $1 million in EBITDA than there are for buyers under $1 million in EBITDA. So there's a lot more chances to create that bidding war. There's a lot more chances to bring hundreds of buyers to the table to maximize value. The other thing to take into consideration, too, on Company A and Company B is projections. They might be even right now, but what are they projecting over the next 5 years? Who is their client market? Who is their clients that they service? What does that look like in the next 5 years? So we also take into consideration projections, and so does the buyer.
Interesting. And what are some of the primary reasons why, though, there's way more buyers that are looking for, I know you alluded to this earlier, but, looking for businesses that have more traction?
There are more buyers for good businesses than there are good businesses to buy.
That's a simple answer.
There's not that many businesses that are over $1 million in EBITDA. It's that simple. So you got your private equity groups And there's thousands of them that are always searching for companies over 3 million EBITDA. Then you got your competitors and strategics that are always searching for companies over 1 million EBITDA. So there's more buyers for good businesses than there are good businesses to buy.
Hey, it's Marcel here, and I want to take a moment to thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. If you're enjoying today's episode, then I want to encourage you to subscribe so you never miss another episode, and be sure to check out some of the other amazing free resources we have at Parakeeto.com to help you improve your agency's profitability. We have lots of other content just like this episode, including other detailed blog posts on some of the key topics, and free downloadable resources like the Agency Profitability Toolkit, which has helped hundreds of agencies improve their profitability with checklists, templates, and free training videos to help you install the Agency Profitability Flywheel all on your own. So if you're interested in grabbing that, head over to Parakeeto.com and check the show notes as well. So with that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I'll let you get back to the episode. I hope you enjoy it. Cheers. And of course, it goes without saying that if you have trouble getting good information out of your financials, if you have trouble getting good processes going in your agency, then it's probably going to be hard for the people doing the diligence process to get that. So it behooves you to do that now so that when you get to a sale, it's not something you have to create for the first time. I'm sure you've been through that, Michelle. What does that process look like? I'm sure it's not fun.
Well, and they want to see, and that's, I'm glad you brought that up about processes and policy and procedure manuals, because they're going to want to see all that paper, and that's another thing I don't want them to see in the beginning, because especially if it's a competitor, I don't want them really going through all your processes. I don't really want them going through your secret sauce, I really want them to get through the financials first, sign off on the financials, and then we'll start going through the rest of the stuff. But yeah, they're going to want to look at everything. They're going to want to look at all your paper. And that's why we work with our clients ahead of time, before we bring them LOIs, before we go through due diligence, to get all their ducks in a row so they're not caught with their pants down.
So what does a really quick diligence process look like versus, what might typically happen with somebody trying to do this on their own and it gets dragged out?
Well, a quick process, so it really always depends upon the transaction, right? There's so many variables that come in play. It depends upon the size of the transaction. It depends upon who your buyer is. I mean, we're working with a private equity group right now that's giving us an offer in a $70 million company, but they have like 10 other deals in a contract. So they're dragging their feet. And I'm like, listen, we're not starting due diligence in until you're ready, you get these other deals done. So it really depends upon who the buyer is, everything like that. If you're trying to do it on your own, it's just going to be a mess. You got to have an attorney. You got to have a CPA. You got to have an advisor. What we do is we set everything up in our data room. If you're doing it on your own, you're going to have to set up your own data room. What a nightmare that is, because we want to control who sees what. So we set up data rooms. We give access first to the legal team. The legal team, legal/accounting team, has to look at everything first, then give us permission to show it to the buyer. Because I want to make sure that the legal team is comfortable with what we're about to give to the buyer. So we give the legal team access first, and we're the ones controlling the entire data room. Then once they agree, then we give access to the buyers, and we keep up with what they looked at, what they downloaded, etc. Because they're busy. And they'll say, oh, well, you never gave us that. And we're like, yeah, we did. It's in the data room. Oh, no, I never saw that. Well, yeah, you downloaded it on this day at this time. So we keep records of everything in the data room and who touched what and when they touched it. This is a very tough process to try to ever manage on your own. And deals always fall apart in due diligence. Almost every single deal will fall apart in due diligence. And that's why when we take offers, when we take LOIs, you have to sign an exclusive, but we don't. So we can get backup offers. Now, you can look at it, you can't sign it, but we got people waiting in the wings that if this still falls apart, we got another buyer for you. We're never going to put all of our buyers in one buyer's basket.
So, I mean, the analogy or the comparison I want to draw for those digital agency owners out there, it's be the difference between trying to build a website for a client and having no process on getting their copy, getting their images, getting their creative, and having to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for all that, versus what you're describing is having all of that ready to go in a solution of software that's prepared to, create very precise access and keep records, and, streamlining that process speeds things up because there's so much less back and forth. There's so much less waiting for, you to create the thing, to share it over to the lawyers to get the approval, then to send that over to the client. You're streamlining this entire process, what I think is key. And of course, if we're talking about a quick diligence process, let's say for a $70 million deal, I don't know, maybe that's a few months. if all of a
It's
sudden that
typically about
doubles or
60
triples.
to 90 days. It's typically
Yeah.
about 60 days, 60 to 90. Again, it depends upon how many other deals I got going on. But it's
Right.
usually about 60 days, sometimes 90. I've seen it go as long as 4 or 5 months before. And then here's the other thing. You don't want to be emailing that stuff over. Because
No.
number one, it's not secure. I've seen also, Marcel, I've seen a lot of business owners go set up a Google Drive. Do not set up a Google Drive. Google is not secure. You never want to drop your financials into Google. I have a client that just did that, just sent us a whole slew of financials that were taken on to sell for about $30 million, and they just dropped them all in Google. I'm like, what are you doing? I set up a data room for you to drop all your financials in that's secure. So you don't want to email that stuff. You don't want to set up, put it in Google. You could set up a Dropbox, but you can't control the drop. It's very difficult to really have reporting from the Dropbox. You need a data room.
And so the fact that you just said, I've seen it go as long as 5 months, tells me that your process is very fast, because 5 months for a lot of the other people I've spoken to that have gone through acquisitions is a quick timeline for a lot of people. And I think that speaks to the benefit of having all this stuff sorted out ahead of time, having good systems, having good process. So, and that could be a big difference between getting a deal done and not getting a deal done if it drags out for too long. So, Michelle, I want to finish with one last important question for anyone that's listening that has a thought in their mind about, maybe exiting their business someday. What advice do you have for them? What should they start doing today to make that a lot better tomorrow?
Well, first of all, everybody needs to read Exit Rich. So in a minute, I'll tell them how to get Exit Rich and all the bonuses you can get now, because the book comes out. The book actually launches in June. But first and foremost, what I tell everybody, everyone, you should always plan your exit. Even if you don't sell, plan your exit. Start, like Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. So I walk everybody through what I call the STGPS exit model. Number one, when you want to drive somewhere, what do? You pull out Google Maps and you plug in your destination, right? All business owners need is a destination. Business owners don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. So right now, every single business owner should pick a sales price. Say, hey, I want to sell for $20 million. Whatever your number is, pick a number. And say, I want to sell for $20 million. Then what does the GPS exit model need to know? Where you're starting from. What is your current location? In other words, what is your current valuation? Most business owners have never even had a business evaluation. It is financial suicide. We go to the doctor once a year to make sure our heart's still ticking and we're still kicking. We drive our car to the mechanic to get an annual tune-up, but we don't know what our business is worth. So you need an annual valuation checkup. Because there are events to increase valuation, there are events to decrease valuation. So you always want to know what your business is worth today. So let's say you want to sell it for $20 million and it's worth $5 million today. What's the next thing you need to know? Time frame. Let's say you want to do it in 7 years. Then you need to know who's your buyer is going to be. I already told you the 5 types of buyers. So it probably would be a private equity group, strategic, competitor, or sophisticated. Then you need to know where's my numbers need to be. If I want to sell for $20 million, where's my EBITDA got to be? Right? So your EBITDA is going to have to be around $4 million, $3 to $4 million, depending upon your synergies. Buyers buy synergies. So I would tell everybody, plan your GPS exit, because when you build a business on the 6P's, which is people, product, processes, proprietary, patrons, and profits, you'll have a sustainable, scalable business. And when something happens and you're ready to sell, whether it's health issues, partner disputes, divorce, unfortunately, hopefully not death, pandemic, you'll have a sellable asset. Because every time a business owner thinks about selling, they don't have a sellable asset. They don't have a business that actually somebody wants to buy. Most business owners have created a glorified job that they go to work at every day versus a business that works for them.
And there's the big idea that I think is a key take home, is even if you never sell the business, even if you never get somebody to write you a big check or give you a bunch of value in their company for your business, those 6P's will make that, to your point, something that you don't need to go to every day to build value, that you don't need to be working in every day to get, an annuity and to get cash coming into your bank account. And so that in many ways could be your exit. It could just be the fact that, I've organized this business such that I don't have a job there anymore. And now I just get to reap the fruits of my labor. And for a lot of people, that's a totally fine exit, even if it's never a big check. So it's just sound business at the end of the day. It sounds like, Michelle, it's not really much more. It's complicated in its nuance, but it's also very simple in that build a great business and that business will be easier to sell.
Absolutely. And so can I tell them where to get Exit Rich?
I would love for you to tell them where they can follow you, grab the book, and learn more about how they can maximize their exit. And we'll put all of that in the show notes for you if you're listening.
So they can follow me on social media. I'm everywhere: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I will have my team send you those links. And then the book. So Exit Rich comes out in June 23rd. But you don't have to wait till June 23rd. You can go to exitrichbook.com today, exitrichbook.com, for $24.79, which is less than Amazon. We will email you the digital download today so you can start reading Exit Rich today. We'll ship the hardcover to your doorstep for no additional shipping for anyone that lives in the United States. Plus, we'll give you a lifetime membership. Now, this is only good before the book launches. We'll give you a lifetime membership into the Exit Rich Book Club. We have video content, me doing deep dives into these different strategies, techniques that I've taught over the last 20 years in the trenches, plus documents to operate your business and to sell your business. We have sample SOP checklist, org charts, policy and procedure manuals, employee handbooks, non-competes, sample LOIs, letter of intents to sell your business, purchase agreements, due diligence checklist, and closing docs. All the documents you need to operate your business and sell your business are there in the Exit Rich Book Club membership for your review and your immediate download. These documents would cost you $3,000 to $4,000 if you went to an attorney to recreate. Plus, we're giving you a free 30-day membership into Club CEOs, which is a mastermind where we do Q&As, hot seats, really ask those tough questions so we can help business owners pivot and build that sustainable, scalable, and when they're ready, sellable business. All for $24.79. That's like less than lunch.
Michelle, what a compelling offer, and indicative of the value that you brought to the episode today. So for all those of you who are listening, I think this is getting released on the 16th, so there's not a lot of time. Make sure you check out the show notes, get access to the book, get access to the bonuses, and with that, Michelle, thank you so much for bringing so much value to such a short time frame. It's amazing how much knowledge you were able to unpack in just 30 minutes. We really appreciate that. And for all of the free goodies that you're offering our listeners today. You've been fantastic, and hopefully we'll have you back again in the future.
I would love to come back. And my main website is seilertucker.com. Seilertucker.com. I would love to come back. Thank you so much, Marcel. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Well, that's all for today's episode, but it doesn't have to be the end of your learning journey. Make sure you subscribe to our show so you never miss another episode. And if you want to get access to more great resources, be sure to check out parakeeto.com, where we've got tons of other free resources, including the Agency Profitability Toolkit, which is loaded with templates, checklists, and training videos to help you improve your agency's profitability fast. And of course, if you like the show, it would really help us out if you could leave us a review and share this with someone else who you think might get value so you can help us serve more people. So with that, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode.